80% of people's New Year's resolutions fail by February. People tell themselves, I don't have enough discipline.
Annual goals are abstract. Humans don't think well into the future. Agility is not about doing more. It's about focusing on what works. And what doesn't work is just as important.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Unscripted Agility. My name is Ghulam and I'm here with my co-host Rick. And today we want to talk about something that almost everyone has wrestled with, and that's New Year's resolutions and why they fail so miserably, and what the research shows actually works instead.
Yeah, and what is striking is how predictable the pattern of failure is. By February, most resolutions are gone. Not reviewed, but just abandoned. And what happens is people almost always turn the blames inward.
Exactly, and 80% of people's New Year's resolutions fail by February, and only 8 to 20% last over the longer. People tell themselves things like, I don't have enough discipline. Oh, I just didn't want it badly enough. I've done this myself. Missed a week, missed a routine, and without deciding anything consciously, the whole plan just faded. But when you look at the data, the self-blame doesn't really stand up. Long-term studies show that roughly 80% of people's New Year's resolutions fail by February, and only 8 to 20% last over the longer term.
Yeah, and that pattern's been consistent for a long time. University of Scranton's done a lot of research that's tracked this behaviour exactly. And so when things fail 8 out of 10 times, the question you should always ask yourself, whether at work or at home, what's happening? It's unlikely to be a motivation problem. It's far more likely to be a design or a system problem.
Exactly, and once you see it as a design issue, the cracks become obvious. Most resolutions are binary. You either succeed or you're failing, on track or off track. Miss one workout, eat one bad meal, and suddenly the whole thing kind of feels broken.
Yeah, psychology has a name for this. They call it what the hell effect. And this is a really important thing to think about because we all do this. I know I do it. It's when something stops, when you fail once, you abandon the change of behaviour you're trying to promote. And you assume the reason for failure is your willpower. It's not.
Right. Resolutions assume that you can decide something once in January and rely on willpower to carry it out for the next 12 months. But, other research by Roy Baumeister shows that willpower depletes. Things like stress, poor sleep, and fatigue drain your willpower. January imagines a perfect version of life, but February usually proves otherwise.
And then there's a time horizon itself. Annual goals are abstract. Humans don't think well into the future. We are much more present focused than that. And so if we can think about what we're doing for the next 2 weeks rather than the next year, we're more likely to succeed. We're wired for short cycles, fast feedback and visible progress.
And there's another issue that often goes unnoticed. Most resolutions have no learning loop. They're set once, unlikely to be reviewed, hardly adjusted, and never allowed to evolve. They're judged forever against the original promise.
Yeah.
And that's very different from how real change actually happens, doesn't it, Rick?
That's correct, Ghulam. If we all think about how we evolve during life, it's always we go ahead for a bit, we hit a plateau. Sometimes it's like we go backwards. We don't just always plateau. Sometimes we actually go backwards. So we need to allow for that in our thinking.
Absolutely. So when you look across behavioural science, for instance, a very consistent pattern shows up. What works is this: small steps, short cycles, fast feedback loops, and low pressure. And people like B.J. Fox and James Clear, who've done some research into this and written some books, kind of clearly outline this.
Yeah, and what we're talking about here is how our actual behaviour works. And we learn by what we do. If we learn to continue to fail, then we'll continue to fail. So we really need to think about how we design our goals, our New Year resolutions, to give us a chance to succeed. And that's why it's far more effective just to think about a 2-week experiment. Let's think about what we can do in the next 2 weeks. Try it. If it works, fantastic, continue. If it doesn't, let's look at how we can adapt and change. And that way we're far more likely to continue.
Absolutely. This is where Agile fits in so naturally. Agile wasn't designed for personal development. It was designed for IT departments or corporations, but it aligns almost perfectly with what the research shows. It reframes goals as experiments, plans as short cycles, and failure as feedback.
Yeah. Once you see this way of thinking about Agile as applying directly in your personal life, you're going to start to see it in everything you do. And this is our message. This is the purpose of Unscripted Agility, to expose people to how Agile and lean thinking can actually help transform their personal lives as well as organisations. And look, the way I think about it is a traditional resolution will be, I'll go to the gym 5 times a week, or I'll start going for a morning walk 5 times a week. And we all know that life gets in the road of that.
It sounds sensible, but it ignores energy, it ignores recovery, injury, real life interruptions. In an Agile version of this sounds very different. For the next 2 weeks, let's say, I'll try 3 workouts, for example, and track my energy, my soreness and sleep. And let's say at the end of those 2 weeks, I review this quite honestly with myself, and I adjust what I'm doing based on the feedback and what I've learned.
Agility is not about doing more. It's about focusing on what works, and what doesn't work is just as important, because if you learn and adapt from what worked and what didn't work, then you're far more likely to succeed.
So, thanks for listening. This is an ongoing experiment.
Exactly. And we'll keep
learning.
This is Unscripted Agility, an ongoing experiment on how to use Agile techniques to live your best life.